Hello, welcome to Through the Noise. I'm your host, Ernesto Glucksman. My next guest runs a software company, and he wants to see more solar panels on rooftops. So they are doing their part by helping solar contractors stay in touch with their customers. CEO Dr. Scott Nguyen is back again. He gave me the lowdown on what's currently impacting the solar industry and his clients. They have to contend with some import tariffs. There's some new net metering initiatives and sometimes some sketchy sounding pricing schemes from utilities that are probably worried about all this renewable energy taking a cut of their business. Well, yet, despite today's obstacles, the future looks bright, really bright for the solar industry. And Dr. Nguyen does a nice breakdown on what's happening in his world. So more electrons, less CO2. Let's get started with the show. Scott, man, thank you for joining me on the show again. Last time you were here, it was February. It was 2001. So you're back.
Wow, that's like, yeah, that's over a year now. February
that's over 2001. A year. What's all that?
Right. Yeah,
time flies.
A long time ago.
Yeah. So you're here to tell me that the solar industry has tripled in capacity. Everything's running smoothly. We're dropping solar panels everywhere, right?
That's partly true. That's actually partly true. Okay. No, so I mean, we talked about this last time, but during the pandemic, Q3, Q4 of the pandemic,
yeah, how'd you guys do?
Residential solar took off. It rebounded from all the shutdowns that happened in Q2. So whenever the entire nation shut down in March of 2020, it was abysmal for solar companies, residential solar companies, because I was talking to customers who said, "Hey, we just laid off half of our team. We just furloughed the entire team." And then us being a startup at that time, we had just launched our product several months before. We were just, we were like, what's going on? What can we do? And so we hunkered down. And then what was amazing was with the pandemic, with everyone being at home and knowing how much energy they were using, how much more they were paying for energy and on their utility electricity bill. And this whole psychological nesting effect that homeowners were going through, residential solar took off in Q3, Q4 of 2020.
Really?
And that then continued on into 2021. I mean, there was a new administration, new kind of what I'll say, a renewed optimism of the public towards climate change, and that we were going to do something about it. And so that was great. So in the second half of 2020 was great. 2021 was great. And now we're in 2022. So things are still growing, but we do have some headwinds at the moment, both just kind of in general, where there's climate change, how that affects customers or affects consumers like us at the daily level, how utilities play a role, but then also how the broader policies, both at the state level and also at the federal level with various tariffs. And there are definitely headwinds that may actually stunt the growth of solar this year and then most likely next year as well. So all of us in the industry are really keeping an eye out on a lot of different points of where certain things can have either a positive effect or a pretty negative effect on our industry.
Well, let's just start contextualizing the business you're in and what you guys do at Bodhi Solar, right? You're a software company that helps solar installers connect with their customers. When I want a solar panel on my roof, right? I'm going to contract a guy. That guy uses your software to keep in touch with me, let me know, the permits are coming, the products are here. We can come to your home now and get it on installed, right?
Yeah, I mean, because the best way to say it is that, these solar installers, they're really good at selling the solar system. They're really good at installing it. but they need help in delivering that digital experience that customers now expect. And so all these customers, they're being conditioned by, Amazon, but then like DoorDash, for example, you can pay $30 for takeout. You know exactly when it goes into the oven, exactly when it gets picked up by the delivery guy and when it gets to the door. But when you buy a $30,000 solar system, one's figuratively left in the dark once you sign that contract, having no clue when exactly it's going to get through the permit, when it's going to be installed. And that's what's left a lot of homeowners asking the question, what's going on with my solar? And so what the solar company, our customers do is they use our software to be that digital interface between them and their customers to really answer these questions and help improve their business, improve the industry as a whole. Because if the customers are happier, if they have good experience, solar is a consumer product. So they're going to tell their friends, they're going to tell their neighbors, and more people are going to also go solar. And the more of those, there's a network effect. And that's when we're going to get this exponential growth in solar adoption that we need to try to tackle climate change.
Right. And so to that extent, improving the customer relationship, the customer experience is key. But of course, there are other stakeholders in this world of energy that probably have a different opinion on how that should go, right? And you're dealing with regulatory constraints, just permitting, depending on where you live, you might have a really good permitting process or you might not. There's limits to what government resources are available to go check your roof, make sure it was installed correctly, or all those things. So managing that state to state, region to region seems like a fragmented world. On top of that, right? On top of that, then you have situations like, I don't know, with this world of net metering happening. And now we're talking about like what impacts your customers, if you're the guys that are using your software. Can you give us some insights in there?
Yeah. And so what's happening right now, so in the past, in California, in Florida, there is a policy called net metering, which means that if a homeowner is generating electricity from their solar panels that they install in their home, they're going to be paid one-to-one on the value of that electricity that then gets shipped back out to the grid if they don't actually use it themselves. And what this provides is a really good incentive for homeowners to be participants in this whole new energy transition, this new energy economy. Now, what homeowners are doing is they're tying their solar system into a regulated utility infrastructure. And in the past, everyone's promoting solar. And so there is a concept of net metering, which is a one-to-one credit for the energy or electricity that they generate. However, utilities don't always play well with the solar industry. And sometimes in the past, they've felt that they are competitors because the more energy that a homeowner produces on their own, the less that they're buying from the utility. And so this is actually taking away from the utilities' revenue streams, especially these investor-owned utilities. And so they've got large lobbying groups. So this is happening in California, this happened in Florida. And so there have been major lobbying efforts to really change this net metering and actually take it away. In addition, not only that, they're also trying to charge extra on a monthly basis, really large fees for homeowners who have solar. And what this does in general is that it really incentivizes solar to be adopted at the distributed level, at the home. And so this impacts our customers two ways. I think so it impacts our customers one big way, but I think this impacts the whole energy transition in a whole nother way that we need to talk about as well. When the financial incentives are being decreased by having extra fees, by not having a one-to-one value of payback or credit for the solar that's being generated at the home, well, that makes the financial incentive of going solar not quite as lucrative as it was before. And so less people who are wanting to go solar, but then they start looking at the economics of going solar, like, wait, how much am I actually saving? And am I saving money? And if I'm not, why am I doing this? Is it enough that I'm saving the planet, that I'm going energy independent? Is it enough to be able to overcome this decrease in the financial incentive? Because sometimes they may have to pay more, which, and so it's going to make
wait.
the job harder for the solar installers to sell more solar systems in the end.
Wait a minute. You're saying they sometimes have to pay more for generating electricity that they sell back to the grid, that the net investment for the solar panels and going through the trouble of putting that together, they actually end up in some situations in some markets paying more than if they just bought.
Yeah, but they just bought, and that's totally fine. Some homeowners are completely fine with that because
that's not fine, but okay, sure.
It's not fine, but yeah, it's not fine because, so generating solar is one of the cheapest ways to generate electricity right now. That's why utilities are investing in utility scale power plants, but that's being controlled by them. What utilities don't like is that this energy is being produced by someone, not them.
The checks aren't going to them. Checks are coming from them, and they can sort of project 20 years from now. If this keeps going, they may have some challenges in terms of their sunk assets.
There was so in California, this has been a huge debate. There's been protests. It's called the NEM 3.0 battle. You can call it I think the CALSA, the California Association for Solar and Storage. California Solar Storage Association. They're a great group out of California that's leading the push to try to fight against the utility lobbyists and their efforts to try to push this, what's called NEM 3.0, which are taking away net metering even more so, making it, and then adding extra fees. And they're essentially, it's a tax on the sun, is probably the best way to say it. And what's been great about it thus far, that through CALSA's effort, is that these proposals that the utilities and their lobbyists have been pushing, that had gotten to the Public Utility Commission, the PUC at California, and it was almost adopted. But because of all the protests, because of all the opposition of the grassroots opposition, that was thrown back. And they said basically, hey, you guys got to start again. This the current plan that you have doesn't work. And so right now we're still in that battle. Same thing had happened in Florida. There is also a net metering battle between the utilities and the grassroots efforts there, the solar industry there in Florida. And there actually legislation that actually went all the way up to Governor DeSantis, and he vetoed it. He was like, "Hey, this is actually bad for our state and bad for our economy, because solar, it employs a lot of jobs. You've got all the sales folks, all the installers, all the back office folks who make the residential solar industry possible. That actually represents hundreds of thousands of jobs. I think on order, I have to go back and look, but I think across the US, there's probably 500,000 employees in the solar industry. And a lot of them are in California, a lot of them are in Florida.
I'm just trying to give benefit of the doubt to these utilities to think about what's the reasoning that they're trying to go up to their regulatory bodies and say, hey, we need to slow down or reduce the payout or add these fees, especially in California, when I hear there's rolling blackouts because of forest fires. Like, they're not even providing the service that they've been given them a monopolistic arrangement by the state to do, well, because they have legitimate drought fires issues, sure, but they're not delivering. Why are you going to then get in the way of distributing some of that energy development into people, on top of people's homes, right?
Yeah.
Like,
so
it seems antithetical there for that. What are their arguments?
So there's an argument to be made. I mean, so the first argument is the fact that they're just not getting paid. The amount of money that they're hoping to have made when they made their investments in the infrastructure, they're actually not getting, because the power is being produced independently by the homeowners themselves. So that's taking away revenue. So that's really kind of the main reason. The other reasons that they also claim is that, you know, now their infrastructure has to handle this intermittent production of energy into the grid. And so there's some definitely extra things that need to happen to be able to control and distribute that energy across the grid. The one thing they don't acknowledge very readily is the fact that because there are there are now little tiny power plants distributed across their territory that is going to be producing, that actually provides extra resiliency to their network. And so, for example, here in Austin is great and a big promoter of solar, but we're growing. And there are times when we are in Austin, our power grid can't handle the demand of the new growth of the city. And so a few weeks ago, there was a big power outage for 4 hours on a Saturday on a really hot, I think it got to 95, 100 degrees.
That's that's not good.
And that was because the substation that was feeding power into it got over capacity. And so this was right during the time when solar was high, when it was hot. And so if there was sufficient solar penetration in that area, that would actually have decreased the load that was required. And so that gives you an example directly of how solar can provide that resiliency to the grid and make these major investments that installers, that the utilities might thought they needed, may not be as may be able to be a little bit more effective or efficient with the capital expenditures that they are going to have to make as during this energy transformation.
I mean, that's part of the actual, I mean, I could empathize with, these utilities have these major assets in, burning coal, burning fossil fuels, whatever, to generate the energy that they use to, power our cities. And those are basically sunk costs into those assets. And to the extent that we have to actually switch to more renewable sources, like really go down this path and make this change, those assets are gonna lose value. I mean, they're stuck. How do you sell, a coal power plant? What do you do with all that, right? So I can understand that fear, but I'm skeptical of these arguments about not getting paid sufficiently. Okay, maybe, or the situation that they're in, it's sort of, to me, I think they need to move to renewable sources. And if they can't do it quick enough, then they just have to network effect. Let all those homeowners do, the ones that want to put the capital up to buy their solar panels and put the batteries, and do it, right?
I mean, it's completely true. And one of the other facets is that utility industry has historically has the strong reputation of being really slow movers. They're not big on innovation. And a lot of them, think about it. These are investor-owned utilities or municipal utilities who have a monopoly over their area. And in exchange for that, they agree to be regulated. And in this kind of environment, they just don't move fast. And they love the idea of being able to always get their 7% return. And when they don't see that, and they see that might be impacted, that's where the fear comes. And they're just not set up that well to change rapidly. And that's what's needed. I mean, eventually, there is this change where we're going to go into renewals. We're going to get solar. We're going to have consumers really defining the energy, what form of energy they want to be consuming and producing and consuming, and how they want to be producing and consuming this. And what the utilities are doing now is just making that that hurt a little bit less. But it's inevitable that this is going to change.
For
And
them,
for
they're
them,
trying to, for them, right? They know it's coming.
they know it's
So
coming. They're going to try to hold off as much as possible. But for those that look to be like, hey, maybe we need to change our business model. Somewhere down the future, maybe a utility will be like an internet provider where all they're doing is providing the infrastructure for electrons to flow from, to the home, away from the home, and then the homeowners is purely buying energy services, kind of like with a internet provider. You pay for internet, and then you pay for access to the internet, and then you buy services like Netflix, everything else. You could subscribe to those. Maybe that's the better business model that a utility can follow, but it's going to take some time. Like I said, they're not known to be innovative. They're not known to change very readily, and there's definitely reasons why. Because everyone originally was hoping for energy. People want energy to be reliable, and therefore you don't want it to be a lot of changes to be made. However, what we're realizing with these extreme events here in Austin, these power outages are happening more and more because these extreme weather events are happening more and more often. And that's going to continue to be the case. So that reliability is going to be definitely stressed. And when that becomes stressed, the consumers are not going to put up with it.
I mean, it's already happened to so many, like California and in Texas, right? And it always happens at like the most extreme, like when it's the hottest or when it's the coldest. It's when you actually want to be in a warm space or in a cold space. Like that's the most important time. And to the extent that these monopolies are failing to meet that specific demand, then unless they have an actual solution other than just adding more grit to the to those that are trying to generate their own solar panel, their own electrons on their rooftops. I mean, like I just don't see. I don't know. I don't know how a commissioner could sit there and listen to those arguments and be like, yeah, okay, that makes no sense to me, right?
I mean, I don't know either. I mean, I think sometimes they can be also out of touch. I mean, give you one example. Here in Austin Energy is proposing some new rates. And what's amazing about these new rates is that if you look into the details of this new rate, so it's going to exacerbate the income inequality that's happening here in Austin, because these rates have been restructured so that the consumers who use the least amount of energy are going to pay substantially more than what they're paying now. So on average, a home that might be 1,000 square feet, for example, let's say an apartment or a home, they're going to pay almost 80 to 100% more. So basically their electricity bill is going to double. However, the largest consumers of electricity here in Austin, the ones with, let's say, a 4,000 square foot house, they're going to actually save money through this.
Okay, because the price will be higher for the initial wattage.
Exactly. So they're changing the customer. There's a fixed customer charge. It's going from right now, I think it's, so let me try to remember. Yeah, wow. Right now it's $10 per customer. They're raising that to $25. And they're changing the rates of how much you pay for electricity as you use it. And so that amount is going to be higher for the lower tiers and doesn't escalate that much on the higher. So if you're a huge consumer, you've got the AC blasting all the time, you're actually not going to pay that much for it. And it used to be structured so that you're financially incentivizing the biggest users to pay the most. But now that's been taken away, or that's been blunted. And so really, I am not kidding. Let me look at my notes real quick. Someone who is got a 4,000 square foot home is going to pay, let's say they're used to pay like $280 per month on electricity. They're only going to pay $145 per month.
Yeah, that's a good break for the guy with the 4,000 square foot home. That's a big home.
And exactly. And so when you going
But
back
the
to
guy living in the studio apartment, he's got to double his bill.
electricity.
So,
And this is the thing where this goes back to when you ask, hey, how are those folks that are sitting at the, at the PUC, at the Public Utility Commissions, how can they think about this or justify this? I mean, sometimes some of those that are in those positions, I think they're tone deaf, because like right now, not just in Austin, but else everywhere, we've got a combination of inflation happening. We've got crazy market condition, housing prices escalating. That's just really driving out a lot of the lower income. And then when you say low income, it's just like still middle class, low income. They're getting priced out as well. You tack that on and say, okay, I'm going to raise your electricity bill. On top of that, I'm going to provide you poor service because I can't even handle the extreme events
load that's
happening. And so
it sounds like, you know what this sounds like to me? This sounds like the credit card model.
What's that? Tell me more about that.
The gold cards and the platinum cards, like the high rollers get all the benefits, but really it's because all those benefits are subsidized from everyone else using a regular credit card and maybe not making their payment every once in a while and getting the fees charged. Like that's the model that exists there,
yeah.
right? And
I think, one of the things is that, I just think it's pretty tone deaf.
It's rough. Now, I guess the business side of me would be like, well, if you buy more stuff, you should get a better rate. You're buying in quantity, I guess, is the argument.
But there's a distinct reason why the more electricity you use, the more cost it should be, because there is infrastructure cost to be built out to service a peak. So, like for example, it's the best way to describe it is like if you've got a pipe and you don't size the pipe for the average, you have to size this pipe for the maximum, right? And the same thing for electricity. If you've got folks, if you don't have that financial incentive to let people limit how much they're consuming, you're going to have to build greater infrastructure. And then second, when we're talking about trying to be, more energy efficient to solve, to help impact climate change, why would you take away this one behavioral incentive that has worked for years and blunt it by changing the rate structure so that you're de-incentivizing energy consumption?
Yeah,
why would you have adjacent programs for going to energy efficient products when that's being wiped out by having this increase, by doubling the electricity prices?
You want to double the prices on the 4,000 square foot home, folks, because they have the money to replace their AC with a heat pump or get more efficient. Like they can invest the money into the bigger and better machines that produce more efficient energy from what they're getting, from what they're using, versus the other way around. It's not, the 1,000 square foot home's not going to be able to afford to get a heat pump.
And it won't even make sense.
It doesn't make sense. The fact that this is even sort of presented as a request to the public utility commissions just seems bizarre to me that they would,
Oh, and here's another kicker.
Get up there and try that.
Another kicker.
But
they
what do I know?
So here's another kicker. Austin Energy has a webpage and they're like, oh, here's a spreadsheet to calculate your, how these rates may impact you. So I download the spreadsheet, I open it up. It's got 200 tabs. And then
great.
It took me forever to figure out what the rates were in there. And I've got a PhD in physics. So, and here's another thing. Underneath that, where they say, hey, you can download this, we are not available to answer any questions regarding the spreadsheet.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
wow.
Austin,
come on, Austin
Energy is a progressive utility. It's municipal. It's got great. It's got a great solar program. It's got a great EV program. But certain things like this rate structure change is
Well, you know what it seems to me, it kind of, these kinds of efforts would indicate to me that there's a level of desperation from that from that utility, from Austin Energy. Like there's something happening there. They're getting there, something is going on that's making them try these things in a more, because if you were really Austin Energy, if you're really that progressive, you wouldn't even try to sell this idea that this lower income homes should pay more of the energy utility. It just doesn't make any sense. But let's move on from that terrible thing here that's happening, because it doesn't end, right? This is like a bit of a whack-a-mole. You got this world of tariffs too.
Yep, that's right.
What's been going on over there, to the extent that
Yeah,
right? You're not the expert in that
I'm not the
space either.
expert in this at all, but there is. So the US has tariffs on Chinese made solar panels. That was enacted several years ago. And there was one small solar panel manufacturer here in the US. Very few solar panels actually get manufactured in the US. But there's some that do. There's one really small one called Axiom, I think Axiom Technologies. They brought a case against to the, I think, was it the Department of Commerce? Is that the agency that
Probably,
does
yeah.
this? And so there's a question mark about potentially some of the Chinese panel manufacturers are actually manufacturing in some of the Southeast Asian countries now. And so by doing that, that circumvents those tariffs, because those tariffs were specific for China, I think. And so Axiom brought this case up to the Department of Commerce, and the Department of Commerce is investigating. And just the fact that they're investigating has caused huge uncertainty in the supply of solar panels. And that uncertainty has caused prices for solar panels to actually rise, which has been actually decreasing for all these years. And that uncertainty in pricing has also led to major solar projects that are put on hold, not being developed. And so what baffles the industry is that we've got this whole initiative for this energy transition where the government itself has a goal that solar powers 40% of the total energy economy by 2040. And they've got these other things that are happening that are really limiting that process, and like these tariffs. And so, it's a question of how do we resolve this and take away these barriers, so that what's the goal here? Is the goal to tackle climate change, produce as many jobs as possible, which is what the residential solar, what utilities solar can do, versus paying manufacturing of a little tiny solar company. So that's another headwind that the industry is facing at the moment. And so until we get clarity on what's going on with that case, the prices are going to continue to be uncertain. The prices for solar panels will be uncertain, and that's going to cause delays in
slowdown in projects, recalculating the investment, people questioning. They got the plot of land, they're gonna start building, but now there's this big component. How is the Department of Commerce going to weigh in on this? To what to what extent that's going to impact our capex in the project?
That's right.
That sucks too. That's not good. I mean, I understand that every country does their protectionist duties, and I guess China, has invested heavily in manufacturing solar panels. They have way cheaper labor costs, right?
No, it's true. So, I mean, that was the thing. So the US tried to do some panel manufacturing back in the 2000s. And then what happened was China decided, hey, we want to be the leaders in this space. And so they subsidized the panel manufacturing capabilities in China in the 2000s, and they won out. And what's now is that they're at scale. But what that has allowed, though, is that that has allowed for the the entire globe to have really cheap solar panels.
The
And
raw
that's what
materials, get
caused
that
a
stuff
huge,
in here and we
and
can
that's
put them
what
on
really
roofs.
led to the big solar boom in here in the US in after 2010. And that boom in solar installations here in the US, that led to these hundreds of thousands of jobs that we're talking about. So the ratio of number of jobs for the installation, so the solar installation business is so much higher than with any sort of manufacturing job. So
I mean, we're not manufacturing photovoltaics. Pretty much we're not in this country. Just like
no,
we're not manufacturing phones. We don't manufacture computer parts. It's overseas. Everything is overseas. We're not, that ship has sailed a long time ago, right? On the manufacturing for most consumer grade and industry grade products.
that's true. No,
It's a
that's
cat's
true.
out of the bag. It's done. So to the extent that a small manufacturer wants to protect their business, I feel for them, but there's no time, right? There's a country, they're making it cheap. Just grab this stuff and get this on solar roofs is my perspective. Why quibble over this at this point? But you're right. Just an investigation can cause so much uncertainty that then projects are put on hold. It's just antithetical again to the effort of our federal government to go, carbon neutral or whatever. Do
Yeah.
you think, I mean, you've been in this business for a long time. Do you have the sense of like, we'll get there eventually, or is it's just going to be a long slog of whack-a-mole tariffs initiatives,
No, I think we're going to get there. I mean, I think the question is how long it's going to take. And so kind of the way I like to think about this is thinking about whether the idea of learning curves or experience curves. So where the price of solar panels, the price of solar is going to decrease, and it's been decreasing, and it's going to continue to decrease without even with these particular hurdles that we have. And each time there's a big change, it's what enables major things to happen. So back in the days when solar was first started, solar panels were only there for satellites. And when it got to be relatively cheap enough, that's when it got mass adopted by the homesteaders, by the RV, by those that need it on the mobile. And then at some point there was this change in 2010 with these really cheap solar panels and an additional business model revolution, that innovation that really led to the current revolution and first wave of wide-scale solar adoption. And so what I'm hoping is that we can continue to fall down that experience curve where solar becomes even less expensive, and that creates another tipping point in what I'll call the second wave of wide-scale solar adoption. And if we can get to that, and we can get to that soon, that's where I think we will be able to hit that exponential rise in solar adoption. So I definitely think that what we do need to push for as an industry is to get the total cost of solar, which includes the equipment costs, it includes all the soft costs, and gets rid of all these particular public policy hurdles that's there as well, so that can we get it low enough so that we can hit that tipping point? And then in that case, the whole industry is going to explode. And that's going to be what the globe needs to tackle climate change effectively and in the right amount of time. And so that's the only thing that I worry about, is that we're going to get there. The question is how long that's going to take, and is that in time? Because if you talk to, for example, Nico Johnson of the Suncast, he's like, we don't have time. And I think it's a really good question, is do we have time? And us in the industry are trying as hard as we can, because we know that we're running out of time. And for those who's like, hey, we need a phased approach, like that phased approach isn't going to do it. We don't have the time for that phased approach.
Yeah, this big gigantic, I call it the transition. I just call it that because it's across all sectors at this point, right? Just trying to get to more sustainable energy, production efficiencies, this transition is going to be painful because there's, yeah, at some point, some of these assets from the energy utilities are going to go dormant at some point in the future. I don't really see how you sell. It's kind of like waterfront property. There's like, most people buy their waterfront property to live out their retirement years or something. But if the water keeps coming in and it keeps flooding every year and the hurricanes keeps getting worse, then at some point, many of them are going to think, well, it's too much trouble, I'm going to sell. But you're hoping that there's a buyer behind you, to pull that purchase, to get your capital out. And to the current trends, there is going to be some calamitous. I don't know how you feel about that stuff, but it seems to be that there will be a point where you won't be able to find buyers of your fancy waterfront home because no one's going to want to take that asset on, right? It's the same thing in the energy industry. So we got to get that transition going and stop playing footsies on like each step of the way. The EU right now looks like they're going to mandate all new homes, new buildings, period, will have to have solar panels. So for you guys, do you guys have like European customers? Is that something?
No, we haven't expanded into the EU yet. We have one international customer at the moment. It hasn't been our focus. US is still our focus for the next year or so, because there's still a lot of work to be done here in the US. And so I think if we could bake our mark here in the US, and then we'll start to expand out after that.
Do you think, with, Bodhi, you guys have gotten, I mean, what's been your experience in talking to investors out there into space? This part of my interest on my show is I want to know what's happening towards like new opportunities. I think you're like one of those guys that's like just really in a good position to like capitalize in what's going to be the inevitable, have to put solar panels everywhere, have to have this type of software for those contractors to manage the experience with their customers. I mean, I think you're in a great spot, but can you characterize a little bit from the beginning where you started with the business and the general conversations you've had with like looking for investors or looking for to where you are today?
Yeah, for sure. I'm happy to do that. I mean, just to take a little trip down memory lane. I mean, I graduated with my PhD in physics in 2006. That was the height of the clean tech 1.0 boom. Then there was a subsequent bust. And
as usual in tech world.
But the investors were like, we're not touching clean tech. Clean tech is actually a dirty word in the investment world. And so for the longest time, there was no interest in clean tech, in solar software, but surprisingly, so we started our company in 2018. I don't think it still wasn't cachet to have a clean tech or clean energy company. I think it was still, clean tech was still a bad word, and it's still a bad word right now. However, there's a new term that started getting floated about 2020 maybe, and I learned about this as well. Climate tech. Climate tech. So climate tech is now a huge sector of the investment world. And it's led by a number of things. So first off, there is really strong pressure from the very top on the investors who want their money to be invested into the future, into ESG, and into sustainability. And so they're putting that requirement to their money managers. And so there have been a lot of private equity firms who are like, oh, I have been previously investing in oil and gas. I think I need to go find some sustainable company or some companies in the sustainability space to start investing in. And that happened. And when you have that from the top down, you start seeing like, well, how do you source those companies? They have to come from the startups. So eventually it got down to climate tech being a big
Hmm.
area, investment area in startups. And so for us, when we started a company in 2018, we've been bootstrapping. And so we're like, hey, we have a problem in this industry, in solar industry, and that we have customers who want a solution to it. And so we bootstrapped, created a product that our customers love, and we were just growing organically. And then in 2021, middle of last year, that's when I started thinking, hey, this is, I mean, things are going well, but we still have a long ways to go. Like we as both a company, but also we as the industry to ramp up as fast as we need to tackle climate change. And so I started talking to investors that I knew just as casually, and like, hey, what's it like these days?
Hmm.
And that's when I learned about climate tech. And that's when I learned that, hey, if you're gonna be wanting to fundraise, now's the right time. And so we looked at that, I looked at what we wanted to do, how we wanted to improve our business, how we wanted to improve our product. And we was like, let's do it. And so we started fundraising at the end of last year, and we closed a $4 million round at the beginning of this year.
Wow,
It was
that was
announced
fast.
yeah, so it was pretty quick. I mean, we have a great product as in we've got a great business, and we
You
found
have
investors.
customers, the
We
whole,
have
yeah.
customers who love us. And then we found it actually a great investor. Um, our investors are Clean Energy Ventures, along with their affiliated angel group, Clean Energy Ventures Group, CEVG. They're mission-driven investors who focus on climate and what are the technologies and what are the businesses that are going to really mitigate carbon substantially over the next 20, 30 years. And we found a great partner in them, and that's why they invested in us. And that's what they really saw was that there's this really big opportunity that, like I said in the past, a lots of focus really on tackling climate change has been on the hardware, on the engineering side, but it's really that relationship between the technology and the people that use it that remains orphaned. And so they saw our fresh, unique approach to the climate change problem from this customer user experience perspective, and believed in our mission and felt like we were really capable. So it's been several months since we've been working with them. It's been great thus far.
How did the deal like come together with them? Like what was there anything surprising in terms of what they were asking you to disclose or not disclose?
So
Like, did
one of
they
the big
care about
things,
something over and over?
yeah,
Yeah.
the one thing that's a bit different is that, a lot of venture firms are trying to, generalists and a lot of venture firms, climate tech is a hot topic at the moment. So climate tech companies are going to get attention by both the more specific investors, climate tech investors, to the generalists who want to have exposure into it. The one thing that's really still, I would say, let's say for startups out there, startup founders out there, those companies who primarily invest in climate tech, they're the ones who are going to readily understand your business. And those are the ones that are going to be easier to, those are the ones that are going to, you're going to make it, it's going to be a lot easier to get them to understand your business model, not to have, and to believe in you and the team to make that happen.
Hmm.
The second thing, oh, did you have a question?
No, just go ahead. Keep
Yeah,
going.
the second part, for CEV in particular, there's several other firms, but CEV being mission driven to mitigate CO2 emissions, they have a criteria for all their investments, that all of their investments need to be able to mitigate at least 2.5 gigatons of CO2 from now to 2050. And so there is a part of the process where we had to say, hey, what is our estimated CO2 mitigate offset as a direct result of our software being used and being adopted in the industry.
Ooh.
And that is a criteria that is not easy to satisfy And it's really, we were able to work with them, really be able to quantify our impact and be able to show that the impact that our company can make by taking this approach from the customer experience standpoint and lowering the overall cost of solar so that we can drive more solar adoption. That is going to be what's going to be key to generating that the amount of CO2 offset that they were looking for.
They were so 2.5 gigatons by 2050 from each of their investments. So
Yep,
like they're like,
right.
what's the plan here? So to the extent that you could say, look, if you use a more integrated CRM experience, we reduce, or what do you typically, when you talk to the guys that are your prospects, when you talk to them, they're using a spreadsheet to keep track of all the projects.
Exactly.
They can't get back to people. I already know what's going to happen. If you don't continuously communicate with your customers, they're going to lose faith that you're paying attention to them and their projects. So they'll develop this sort of dissatisfaction. I gave you this big check for the solar panels, and then I don't hear from you for months, that kind of thing. So your system probably reduces what in there?
So by everything that you described, it's a reduction in cost for the company, which that reduction in cost will then drive more homeowners to go solar. And each home that goes solar, they're going to be, when they go solar, and most of them are, offsetting close to 100% of their electricity use, that's offsetting all the CO2 that they would be generating from the time they turn the system on through the 25, 30-year life of that system. So it's not just taking away carbon for one day or 1 year, it's taking it through the whole life of that house.
And your reduction in costs with your customers is customer acquisition cost, probably is what you're talking about, right? Like
both. So we impact both customer acquisition costs and we impact the operations costs, project management costs. Both sides of it. And once you start adding it up, I mean, our customers have reported that they are getting anywhere between 25 to 50% reduction in customer support costs on the operations side. And they're generating about up to about 30% more referrals than they used to. And referrals are, they close at about a 50% rate, which is about 10 times more effective than any cold calls or cold leads.
Okay. And so then if you're able to sort of show, like, just signing on with us, guys, I can improve your operations, let's say on average 30% cost reductions, and your referral costs are going to, like, that adds to the story of, like, then how many more projects can you do? Therefore, you go back to your investors, you go, look how many more each customer we get is able to accomplish. And then you attach how many, non-fossil fuel generating, like, you attach the cost of the energy they generated in a sense, right? To reduce the carbon footprint for that home, for that project, and so forth.
That's right.
Oh my God. Okay. But that's a lot of math. That's a lot of putting that all together. What was the hardest part in sort of putting that metric to satisfy this investor?
It was forecasting it out to 2050.
Okay. You kind of want to forecast on the conservative side of things so that you exceed your investors' expectations, right? Do they work with you on all that? Do they understand?
Yeah, they worked with us on it. And so a lot of it is trying to understand the market for solar and what's the rate of adoption of solar, what it's going to be, like what it is now, which is relatively documented, but what's it going to be 10 years from now, 20 years from now? What is the rate of solar adoption still? And so those are areas that just takes a little bit more assumptions. You're right. We try to be conservative, and then given all those numbers, are we in the right ballpark? And if that's the case, that's yeah. So it's an interesting calculation, but I think what it really just speaks back, when you take a step back, this is why all of us are in this game. All of us in our company, that's why we're here. That's why we slog through it day in and day out. And what that calculation is doing is just verifying and just providing, the numbers to an effort that all of us are mission driven to achieve.
So it sounds like finally it's nice to actually have an investment, private equity groups here that are starting to, provide their dollars, their CapEx to you to do this, to like speed this scale up Bodhi, scale up your operations to reach more of these contractors and so forth. So, I mean, congratulations. That sounds like you hit it at the right time, because the markets are a little bit down. I don't know, last few weeks.
No, yeah. So, I think the investment we have, it's, we're always going to go, solar's always been a roller coaster, and that's why they call it the solar coaster. And we're going to go through more of this. So like the headwinds that we talked about at the very beginning of the show. But I think what we as our company will do is we're going to focus on our customers. We're going to focus on our users and try to make the product better. And now we've got the additional investment to do that, and hopefully, really just accelerate both the adoption of Bodhi and the adoption of solar, but also accelerate the things that we can do with Bodhi in this whole grander mission of trying to cultivate the bond between people and the energy that powers their lives.
Awesome. Scott, thank you so much. Let's just end it on that note. So let's not make it a year again for you to come back. So, but I know you're a busy guy this year. So I commend you guys, Bodhi.solar. If you're in the solar world, or you're looking to get into it and you're looking for software that can help you develop that customer, experience, go check them out. So
sounds great. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks
for having
Scott.
me on the show again.
Yes, let's do it again. Take care, everybody.
Great.
Visit throughthenoise.us for more episodes and subscribe to our newsletter. This show is produced by Through the Noise Consulting, uniting external communications and internal IT functions to ensure data and privacy are protected while creating innovative communications platforms. Want to start your own podcast? We can help. Visit getthroughthenoise.com to learn more.